Memorial Care Saddleback Medical Center in Laguna Hills, California, claims they have heroes working for them. Will you be the judge? On March 23rd, 911 took my mother to the ER. My mother 10 years ago had a stroke. She couldn't talk. She didn't understand words. She was paralyzed on the right side. 911 takes her to the hospital. I show up a few minutes later and I said my mother's name. I'm here for my mother. They told me to go wait in the car. And I said, you know, I know you have the covert thing going around, but you also have a policy of one parent per child. They said, get in the car or you'll be arrested. Okay, fine. So they ended up intubating my mother. My mother laid in the ICU for 8 days with this hose down her throat. I told them I have documents stating I'm her legal guardian, run things past me. They never ran anything past me. I had to call them 2 and 3 times a day. How's my mother doing? How's my mother doing? And it was always after the fact. Oh, we're not doing this to her now. We're doing that to her now. And I go, is she still intubated? They go, yes. I go, when are you gonna pull the hose out of her throat? Because the longer a person's intubated, the harder it is for the hose to be pulled out of her. So, like I said, 1 day, 2 days, 3, 8 days go by. 8 days go by. And each day I'm calling them 2 and 3 times a day. They took blood from her every morning. And every morning I'd call and say, how's my mother's white blood cell count? How's her iron level? And how's her INR? The INR is the thinness of her. She was on blood thinners because she had atrial fib. So her therapeutic level was between 2.0 and 3.0. And they had to monitor that. That's the higher the number, the more thin your blood is. So one morning I called and I asked all the regular questions. How's her iron? How's her white blood cell count? And then how's her INR? And the nurse goes, it's 15. I go, 15? Red alert, what are you guys going to do about it? And the nurse was, well, I think the doctor is going to do something. There was no urgency. There was completely no urgency in her voice, nothing. So on the 8th day, they finally take her out of the ICU. They took the chance, as they told me. They pulled the hose out of her throat, out of her lung. They extubated her, and they moved her to the regular floor, and she had a BiPAP mask on. She was breathing on her own. They moved her out of the ICU. Why they moved her out of the ICU, I don't know why. So I get a call, April 3rd, she's ready to come home. And I thought she'd be home. I get a call from the nurse. He goes, it doesn't look good for your mother. You better get down here. So right when he said that, I knew that he wasn't going to do anything else. And 2 years prior, I signed a document there called a POLST document, P-O-L-S-T, Physician's Order for Life-Sustaining Treatment. 2 years ago, I signed it at this hospital. And I rushed down there. I get to the hospital. Security's there again. They frisked me down like a criminal. I said, I got to get upstairs. I got to see my mother. They wouldn't allow me. She gets a phone call. She goes, you got to sit here. I go, wait, my mother's dying upstairs. Sit there or you'll be arrested. So I sat there for 5 minutes. I get upstairs. My mother's already dead. They gave her a big dose of morphine and they let her go. I called patient. She died on Friday, April 3rd. I called patient Advocacy the next Monday, and I'm trying to get in touch with her. I called her 3 times. She never got back to me. So my questions to her were, why was I not allowed to be with my mother, even though you had a policy of one parent per child? I said, my mother's a child. She needs me with her, because in the past, whenever she was in the hospital, I stayed with her through the night. I stayed with her through the day, because she can't communicate. And then I asked her, why didn't you honor any of my documents saying I was her legal guardian? Why did I have to keep calling you, finding out what's going on with my mother? And then the last one, why didn't you honor the document that stated that you were supposed to do full code if she gets in trouble? So after almost a month, this lady writes back to me and she tells me, well, due to the laws coming down from the state, we couldn't let you be with your mother. But they had the policy, March 23rd, one parent per child. This wasn't even really my mother's hospital. Her hospital was Hoag Hospital, the next town over, but they took her to this one because 911 said she was having a hard time breathing, got to take her to the closest hospital. Then in her letter, I asked her, why didn't I consult with the doctors? She says the doctors did talk to you. I had to call them 2 and 3 times a day. The other question was, why did you not do full code with her when she was in trouble towards the end? She's trying to say that I verbally agreed to palliative care, which was a lie. They showed me no papers that I signed. As I said, they gave her a big dose of morphine and they let her go. All the time that she was in the hospital, the 12 days, I called every day and I reminded them, you allow 1 parent per child. They ignored it completely. At one point they said, okay, we'll give you 4 hours to be with your mother in the ICU. I rushed down there. I get in the room, and I get in the room after I put on all the equipment, and the nurse goes, you got a half hour. I go, wait a minute. And the doctor was standing outside. I said, I thought you said I had 4 hours. Oh, they must have changed the rules. So we went back and forth. Well, then what am I coming down here for a half hour? You know, I wanted to spend time with my mother. So someone calls security. Security comes up, yelling at me while my mother's passed out in the bed, yelling at me. You listen to them or we're going to kick you out of here. So I stayed the half hour and I was escorted out of the hospital. Last time I saw my mother, she was dead. As I said, she died on a Friday. I called her cardiologist on Monday and he was upset. He said, your mother was only on 3 medications. She had a strong heart. They could have re-intubated her. But no, they didn't. They just gave her the big dose of morphine. After about a month after this happened, I started thinking what these people got away with. I protested for 30 days on the corner holding a sign telling the world how they took my mother's life. A lot of people pulled over and they were telling me similar stories of what happened to them. Security at the hospital called the police on me 3 times. They couldn't do anything because I was standing on a public sidewalk. One of the security guards pulled up in his car, started yelling at me, said, you better get the hell out of here, I'm going to call the police. They couldn't. I was on a private side. So they turned the sprinklers on the grass to try to drive me away. So all this time, my mother died there alone. She died like, I was not allowed to be with her, even though their policy was 1 parent per child. So my question to you is, where are the heroes they're talking about at this hospital? I thought a hero is someone who steps forward while everybody's stepping back. Where was the hero that said, this man, we do have a policy of 1 parent per child. We have to let this man be with his mother who can't communicate. No heroes there. Where was the hero when my mother was in the ICU and I was cut off from her completely and that they left her intubated for 8 days? Knowing full well the longer she was intubated, the less likely she was going to get off of it. But she was successfully taken off it in 8 days. That just tells you 3 days with it she could have been taken off it, but they didn't bother with it. Where was the hero when they were giving my mother a big dose of morphine and letting her go, poisoning her like I said, like some dog dying in an alley? Where were the heroes? There were no heroes at Memorial Care Saddleback Medical Center. Nobody stepped forward. My mother was going to be 86 in 6 days. She missed her birthday by 6 days. 6 days she missed her birthday. They saw her. They went through the motions. They didn't bother. And you know what tells me they didn't bother? Bother when her INR, her blood thinner, her thinness of her blood was so high. There was no urgency. When they had her extubated, when they put the hose down her throat, intubated, and they thought it was no big deal to have her lay there 8 days. And there was no big deal to dose her up with morphine, even though the letter that I wrote that's signed saying do full code was signed 2 years ago. They totally ignored it. They did what they wanted with her because she was an older lady, and they've said, why bother? And as I said, her cardiologist said she was only on 3 medications and her heart was strong. So I want to let the world know what Memorial Care Saddleback Medical Center did to my mother and to others who I've talked to as I stood on that corner for 30 days. Now, you know where my mother is right now? This is where, these are her ashes. They put her in a box. These are my mother's ashes, the sons of guns. They put her in a box. Anyway, if anybody wants to donate to GoFundMe, I want to try to get a lawsuit against this hospital. They are killing the old. They're not bothering with the old, because the same treatment they would have given a 20-year-old, my mother would have been around today. But they didn't want to bother with her. They didn't want to bother with her. So just click down on the bottom of your screen. There should be an area where you can click on to GoFundMe, and you can make a donation if you want to be a part of this, to contribute towards this lawsuit towards the hospital. Thank you very much. Thank you.